Hello everyone, this is Venom Geek Media here, and today I thought we'd do another discussion on a slightly different topic than usual, but still in the realms of science fiction, or science fantasy, however you want to describe it. And that's Star Wars. Don't worry, I'm a Trekkie at heart, but there's lots of other sci-fi out there that I'd like to cover, and they all have cool stuff, even though Star Trek does have the best ships. But today, I thought I'd take a look at an issue that has recently cropped up within the Star Wars fandom. Well, certainly now that the fandom is becoming, if you ask me, rather dominated by prequel kids. They have their view and their opinion, and it doesn't seem like the old guard are defending the original trilogy and all the stuff in it in as much as they should. So I'm going to weigh in on this topic, and this is in defense of the AT-AT or AT-AT. I don't mind which pronunciation. AT-AT seems easier, just because I won't say AT-TE. But yes, defending the AT-AT. Why? Well, because it's been criticised over the years as impractical. Okay, yes. Equally, every vehicle in Star Wars is impractical in some way. If the Star Wars ground vehicles were practical, they'd look like modern day main battle tanks. But no one wants to see that. We want to see cool, outlandish designs. So within that universe, you've got to kind of confine what is and isn't practical, and also compare it not to stuff that we have, that exists in real life, but other stuff that's existing within that fiction. Now, like I say, a lot of prequel kids are saying the AT-TE, the Clone Wars Walker, they say it's great, it's amazing, it's way better than the AT-AT. Why did the Empire replace it? Stupid Palpatine and all that stuff. Now, I'm going to really just talk about why, in reality, the AT-TE isn't that great and the AT-AT is very, very good. Comparatively. So, I'll start with the weaknesses, or just talking generally about the AT-TE, because it came first. And so, it looks very good. It's got that, very low set frame, short legs, very close to the ground. It's very close to the ground, and that's all, makes it a smaller target. It's small, it's more compact. It has redundancy in its legs. You can't trip it over. And it's like, yes, okay, you can't trip it over. But as we see in the Clone Wars, there's about 1 million other ways to kill it. Very, very easily. It's a very vulnerable vehicle. Now, it's manufactured at a time of great pressure and war, so you can kind of understand why that might be, but nevertheless, it's still flawed. But if it's all you've got at the time, it's all you've got at the time. But that doesn't mean it's great. So for starters, we'll look at its armament, and for armament, it has the mass driver cannon on the turret on the top, which is very big, very powerful cannon, and throughout the Clone Wars seems to be capable of blowing away most Separatist armor. That's great. But it's got a pretty slow rate of fire. It's a mass driver cannon, which means that it can run out of ammo. And so you've got to carry more ammo. That takes up space because it's using actual ammo, not gas, which is easier to carry. So there are problems with that in terms of longer term engagements and keeping that thing supplied. You then have the 6 laser cannons or laser turrets in those ball turrets, 4 at the front, 2 at the back. And again, people think, well, this looks great. It's got a bit of everything. It's got the big gun on top. It's got the guns on the sides. It should just be blazing laser fire across the battlefield, like a moving fortress of just bristling with guns and all that. Unfortunately, that's not really how it works. Certainly, if we look at, I'm saying, I'm breaking the rule, but at the same time, this is one of the cases where I'm pretty sure the rules of real life do apply to souls, and this is the logistics of tank command. Because people think, oh, multi-turret designs, it's a great idea, particularly when you're 10. You don't really think those things through. You just think, you just be blazing gunfire everywhere, all over the battlefield. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. For my example, I would point you to the Vickers A1E Independent. Now, this is a tank, British tank, produced in the 1920s, in the sort of the mid-war years, and it is a multi-turret design. You have one large turret on top with a 47mm gun, okay for the time, and then you have 4 other turrets, subsidiary turrets, each with a Vickers machine gun. Now you think this sounds great. It's got, it can take out tanks while taking out infantry. All this. Well, it's still only got one tank commander, and bear in mind how the your view within a tank is obstructed. It's not really gonna help, because the tank commander's got one periscope. He's one man with one periscope. He can't see everywhere at once. And the case is the same with the ATT. There's only one, well, they called him a spotter, but essentially he's the commander. There's only one of him, so he's only going to be able to call out one target at a time, which basically means only one set of the guns is firing. You also then have the issue of, well, then you also lose more gunners. If the tank goes up, you lose more crew. That's not taking into account transport capacity. That would be a different story. But there's other problems. So we've already said, it's very killable. We see that a lot. Its armament really isn't that well applied. The cockpit is extremely vulnerable. It's basically useless against... It can't defend itself against aerial targets. It was what they had at the time, and it proved good enough, but that doesn't mean it's the best thing ever. So, let's now move on to the AT-80, which I think is a sensible evolution. First of all, it's protected from mines by being raised very high off the ground. Now you might say high center of gravity, so you have that, the tow cable trick. Now you can say that, but thing is, well, we see the First Order with their ATM-6 take measures against that, but also I think you could do crews, once they realise that, could very easily add similar things to an AT-80. And also, really, how frequently is that going to happen? Not that frequently. During the whole of the Battle of Hoth, I think only 2 AT-80s were downed, which is very poor on the part of the rebellion. It was shown to be pretty much immune to artillery. It was also able to tank direct hits from the mass driver cannon, so it's got a very thick armour. Its armour is in fact thicker, if you like, thicker than its gun, in terms of if you wanted to easily penetrate that armour, you'd have to get a gun bigger than the one that it carries. It has the twin heavy laser cannons, so these are capable of destroying other tanks, as we see again in the battle in Rebels. They're also very rapid fire, and would certainly outgun the ATTE. But they're also rapid fire, so that means they can be used on a multitude of targets as well, and you can just move and be ready for the next shot. But even when the rebels take control of another AT-AT, AT-AT, in that episode, the AT-AT still tanks several hits from its neighbour. So it has very thick armour. So the AT-AT very clearly puts emphasis on crew safety more than anything else. Which is interesting, you say the Empire is all evil and everything, but they actually care about crew safety. The Republic really didn't. I mean, again, going back to another issue with the AT-TE, which is the pilot, the most important guy in a vehicle is arguably the driver, because he's what makes the vehicle move. And in the AT-TE, he's very vulnerable. Now he isn't in the AT-AT. In the AT-AT, the crew is extremely well protected. And okay, they don't have a 360-degree turret, but they do have a moving head. They're in the moving head of the vehicle, which gives it a plenty of view either side. We see it is able in the Battle of Hoth to shoot down aircraft anyway, so it seems a much better balance. Also, bearing in mind the role of the AT-AT, in that really it's not expecting to fight armour because no one's left who's got any tanks. And as such, it's very much angled towards being an infantry support vehicle. Probably the best example would be a Churchill, but the Churchill isn't also an armoured personnel carrier. This is. But that as a infantry support vehicle, it's also extremely good. It's going to draw all the fire, all the attention away from the infantry, and if anyone does try to outflank it, well, you've got infantry going alongside it who are going to protect it, so be fine. Same thing was the case with the Churchill tanks during World War II. They had very, very thick armour, and okay, they were slow, but you could try get around them, but there was infantry as well, so they were very difficult to get past. The other advantage it has is from its height, as well as protecting itself from mines, is it's got a very good view of the battlefield. Now, this has two things. Firstly, the commander can contact the stormtroopers below and say, oh, there's an enemy emplacement there or there, so it provides a good bit of recon and overwatch. The other thing is it can still fire over the troops without risking hitting friendlies. And the other thing is it's able to then act in very direct ground support, and is able to cover a huge amount of area in support. So it's much more fit for purpose in that it's made for a very specific purpose. Now, is it really sufficient when it comes to combating the Rebel Alliance? You could argue that. But you definitely see that the problem with the AT-TE is it was born out of an extremely speculative situation where nobody really knew what the Clone Wars was going to look like, so made a vehicle to cover all avenues. And as such, made a jack of all trades, a master of none. I would definitely say that the AT-AT is is much more refined than the AT-TE, and is ultimately the superior vehicle. Can you imagine the number of clones that would have been saved during the Clone Wars if they had had AT-ATs? And also we see then the First Order continue using that sort of platform or that base for a very different thing in the AT-M6, which is very much a assault gun, a mobile assault gun, and really we haven't seen enough to know how effective it is. But the AT-AT is most certainly an improvement upon the AT-TE. It is not born out of any fallacies of the Tarkin doctrine. It may well have fit with the Tarkin doctrine, in that it looks scary, but it was certainly not born out of the fallacies of the Tarkin Doctrine, i.e., it wasn't simply built to look scary. There were good practical reasons for why it is built in the way it is. Now, these happen to result in something that does fit in nicely with the Tarkin Doctrine, but it is still a very practical vehicle, and much better and much more refined than the ATT. But those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.